Welcome to Life Stories, where we share powerful tales of resilience, courage, and the strength of the human spirit. In today's story, we meet Jessica Carter, a former Special Forces operative who sought peace in a quiet community after years of service. But when her home becomes the target of a hateful attack, Jessica's inner strength and determination are put to the ultimate test. This is a story of standing up against injustice, fighting for what's right, and inspiring change in the face of adversity. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories as we begin today's inspiring journey. Jessica Carter had always believed in resilience. It was a lesson ingrained in her from years of military service, honed through nights spent under foreign skies and days navigating challenges that demanded both mental and physical strength. But after retiring from the Special Forces, Jessica sought a quieter life in Atlanta, Georgia. She traded the structured chaos of combat for the steady hum of mentoring at-risk youth. Kids who needed someone to remind them that their dreams mattered, no matter how much the world tried to crush them. Her home reflected her journey. It wasn't grand or showy, just a modest, proud house she'd rebuilt from the ground up. Each plank of wood, each brushstroke of paint, held the weight of her determination. The house wasn't perfect, the walls bore the imperfections of a hand-built life. But it was hers. A sanctuary carved from years of hard work, patience, and discipline. To Jessica, it wasn't just a house. It was proof that even when life tore you down, you could rebuild. One Friday evening, after a long day spent running workshops for teens, Jessica returned home, her SUV humming to a stop in her driveway. She stepped out, her keys jangling in her hand, the evening air still warm and alive with the sounds of her neighborhood. She was exhausted but content. A day spent helping kids envision a brighter future always left her drained but fulfilled. As she glanced down the street, something caught her eye. A group of teenagers leaned against a lamppost, their laughter carrying on the breeze, loud, jagged, and sharp. The kind of laughter that didn't come from joy but from the thrill of making someone else feel small. Jessica recognized the look immediately, boredom mixed with recklessness. It was the kind of energy that could spiral into trouble if left unchecked. Her instincts flickered a spark from her years of training, but she brushed it aside. Not tonight, she thought. She deserved a quiet evening, a moment to breathe. As she stepped inside, the familiar silence of her home wrapped around her, soothing her nerves. She set her bag down on the kitchen table, the weight of the day slowly lifting. But the peace didn't last. The sound shattered it, a sudden, deafening crash, like glass breaking under immense pressure. Jessica's heart jumped, her body tensing as adrenaline surged through her veins. She rushed to the window, and what she saw hit her harder than any blow she'd ever taken in combat. Her front yard was a battlefield. Spray-painted slurs in neon colors dripped down her walls, their venomous words almost glowing in the warm evening light. The flowers she'd carefully planted on weekends, bright bursts of life she'd nurtured with care, lay flattened, stomped into the dirt like they were nothing. Her windows, once pristine, were now jagged shards, glass reflecting the chaos of the scene. And in the middle of it all stood the teenagers she'd seen earlier, armed with spray cans and bricks, their laughter louder now, mocking, cruel, fueled by a dangerous sense of entitlement. Jessica stepped outside, her face calm, though her body was as taut as a coiled spring. She wasn't the kind to panic or yell. Years of Special Forces training had taught her to assess situations with precision, even when emotions ran high. "Why?" she asked, her voice steady but sharp, cutting through their noise. "Why would you do this?" The group hesitated, their bravado faltering for a moment. One boy, clearly the ringleader, stepped forward with a smirk that practically begged to be wiped off his face. "Because people like you don't belong here," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. The words were a slap, but Jessica didn't flinch. She had faced worse, much worse. But before she could respond, the boy hurled a brick at her house, shattering another window. The others joined in, laughing as they added to the destruction. The sound of approaching sirens finally sent them scattering into the night, leaving behind a wreckage that went far beyond physical damage. Jessica stood in the ruins of her front yard, her fists clenched at her sides. It wasn't the graffiti or the broken windows that hurt the most, it was the message behind their actions. This was a reminder of the world she thought she'd left behind. A world where she had to fight twice as hard just to exist. When the police arrived, their response was as broken as the glass on her porch. The officer in charge barely glanced at the graffiti before shrugging. "Kids being kids," he said, his tone casual, as if it were a harmless prank. Jessica's breath caught. "Excuse me," she asked, her voice tight with controlled anger. The officer sighed, clearly annoyed. "What do you want us to do? Arrest a bunch of teenagers? You should probably just put up some cameras." "Let it go." Jessica's voice cut through the air like a blade. "They vandalized my home. They threatened me." The officer, unmoved, glanced at his notepad as though he were already bored. "Look," he said. "What do you expect us to do? It's not worth the trouble." Jessica stared at him, her jaw tightening. She didn't yell, didn't argue. She knew that look, the indifference, the dismissal. It wasn't the first time she'd faced it. And she knew it wouldn't be the last. As the patrol car drove away, Jessica stood on her porch, surveying the wreckage. She took a deep breath, her mind already calculating. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The morning sun filtered through the broken windows of Jessica's home, illuminating the chaos left behind. The house, once her sanctuary, now felt exposed, vulnerable, a stark reminder of how quickly peace could be shattered. But Jessica wasn't one to wallow in despair. She had faced adversity before, and she knew the only way forward was through action. As she sipped her coffee, her mind raced with questions. Who were these kids? Why had they targeted her? But most importantly, how could she ensure they didn't do this to anyone else? Jessica had no illusions about the system stepping in to protect her. She had seen too many injustices brushed aside. Too many instances where the people who were supposed to help simply didn't. The answer was clear: she would have to handle this herself. Jessica walked to her garage, where remnants of her past life were carefully stored away. Behind a false wall panel, she revealed a hidden compartment. The contents neatly arranged like a time capsule of her years in the Special Forces. Tactical gear, surveillance equipment, encrypted tech, it was all there. Untouched but ready. She ran her fingers over the equipment, a wave of old instincts rushing back. It had been years since she'd needed these tools, but the muscle memory was still there, as sharp as ever. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. Not just for herself but for her community. Over the next few days, Jessica worked tirelessly, transforming her home into a fortress. Hidden cameras disguised as garden decorations now dotted her property, their lenses quietly watching over every angle. She reinforced her doors and windows, ensuring they could withstand another attack. Every move she made was calculated, precise, a reflection of the discipline that had once kept her alive in far more dangerous situations. When the system fails you, you become the system. That thought echoed in her mind as she pored over the camera feeds late into the night. It didn't take long for her to find them. The teenagers who had vandalized her home spent their evenings at a nearby park, lounging on benches and bragging about their exploits. Jessica listened as they laughed about the graffiti, their voices dripping with pride as they recounted every detail of their victory. But there was more. Jessica soon realized they weren't acting alone. At the edge of the group, a man stood apart, his presence commanding. He wasn't one of them in age or demeanor, but it was clear he was in charge. He spoke sparingly, but when he did, the kids listened. They hung on his every word, nodding in agreement as he laid out plans for future attacks. Jessica's gut tightened as she observed him. This wasn't just a misguided group of teens blowing off steam. This was something deeper, more insidious. She dug into her resources, using her tech skills to identify the man. His name was Marcus Grayson, a middle-aged agitator with a history of organizing intimidation campaigns. His hatred festered like a disease, spreading through the young people he manipulated into carrying out his plans. One night, Jessica followed Marcus to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Atlanta. She moved like a shadow, her movements silent and deliberate as she recorded what she found. Inside, Marcus addressed a group of followers, his voice filled with venom and a disturbing confidence. He painted himself as a savior, rallying them with hateful rhetoric and plans for escalation. Jessica's heart pounded as she watched. This wasn't just about her. Marcus was orchestrating a campaign of fear, using these teenagers as pawns in his twisted game. The evidence she had gathered was powerful: videos, photos, audio recordings. But Jessica knew it wouldn't be enough to force the authorities into action. The system was slow, indifferent. She needed to turn public outrage into a weapon. Back at home, she sat at her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard. In a matter of hours, she hacked into Marcus's accounts, freezing his funds and exposing the list of donors who supported his operations. Then, she leaked the footage from the warehouse to local media outlets. The response was immediate. News stations ran the footage on repeat. Community leaders condemned Marcus, and public pressure began to mount. But Jessica knew better than to think it would end there. Marcus wasn't the kind of man to back down. That night, as Jessica reviewed her camera feeds, the retaliation came. A Molotov cocktail hit her front door, the flames licking hungrily at the wood. But Jessica had prepared for this. Her reinforced doors and fire suppression system activated, extinguishing the flames before they could spread. Her cameras captured everything: the faces of the attackers, their frantic retreat. By morning, the footage had gone viral. Jessica's home had become a battleground. But she wasn't afraid. She had learned long ago that fear was just another enemy to be overcome. And this fight wasn't over. Not yet. In the end, Jessica Carter's courage and unwavering determination became a beacon of hope for her community. By standing up to hate, she not only protected her home but also dismantled a dangerous network of fear and intimidation. Her story of resilience inspired countless others to take a stand against injustice, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, one person's strength can spark change. Jessica didn't seek recognition. She wasn't interested in fame or accolades. For her, the real victory was knowing she had protected her community and shown that love and action could overcome even the darkest intentions. If you enjoyed this story of resilience, courage, and hope, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories for more powerful narratives that remind us of the strength of the human spirit. Stay tuned for more inspiring stories.